We've talked quite often about the possibility of war between China and the United States. But it goes much deeper than this. You see, not only are we talking about physical war with China, over the past several years, we have been at ideological odds with China. China is going in one direction, and it happens to be towards communism and socialism. And the West is supposedly going towards democracy. However, interestingly enough, a marriage has taken place. And those are not my words. In fact, they're according to Joshua Eisenman, who is an American fellow, or a senior fellow for China Studies at the American Foreign Policy Council in Washington, D.C. And his claim is that Wall Street elites and Beijing have had a marriage. So most people describe the U.S.-China relationship, in China especially, and in the United States as well, in terms of nation-states. The United States versus China. And then they talk about things like the Thucydides trap and international relations theory. But I think that actually miscategorizes the nature of the relationship. What we have, and what we've had for years, has been a marriage of elites in Beijing, and to some degree Shanghai, I suppose, with elites in New York and in Washington. One professor, when I was there at a top university, told me that this is a marriage, particularly with Wall Street. So the idea is that the elites come together and essentially exploit the working people of China and steal the jobs of the working people of the United States. And then it is basically balled up and wrapped up as a nationalist conflict. So what is essentially a classist issue, a Marxist issue, a struggle between the different strata of society, the elites versus the rest of society, is actually intentionally disguised as a national struggle between the two nation states. So as we understand the nature of what's taking place right now with China, we need to know what China's up to, specifically Xi Jinping. China just recently outlined their plan to overtake the United States on the world stage over the course of the next 30 years. No longer is this communist country seeking to be just a regional superiority. Rather, the economic powerhouse is looking to be the superpower, and I mean the superpower. According to another analyst in defense strategy and capability at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Dr. Malcolm Davis, China just doesn't want to be a regional superpower. It wants to be the superpower. American political scientist Graham T. Allison recently also stated, "The question is not when China will rise, but rather how the U.S. will respond to such." While so many over the past few years have disillusioned themselves with rationale that undermines the ability of China, several political analysts have taken note of the rise of China. However, the communist nation didn't rise without aid. In fact, former President of the United States Bill Clinton in 1996 aided China by granting them permanent normal trade relations, directly after receiving $2 million in campaign donations from the foreign government directly. And they talk about Russia and Trump collusion. But here is where Bill Clinton accepted campaign donations directly from the Chinese government, and then went on to set the path towards what we're dealing with today. In large part, China's rise economically could be attributed to the actions of that former president. Now, China is close to surpassing the United States economically. In fact, China's economy is so large in comparison to the United States that according to Christine Lagarde, the IMF director, in as little as 10 years, the International Monetary Fund's headquarters could also be relocated to China. I hope we're all getting the gist of where this is all going. You see, at the latest communist gathering, President Xi Jinping, in his 3.5-hour speech, urged a reinvigorated Communist Party to take a stronger role in society and economic development to better address the nation's grim challenges. Speaking in the massive Great Hall of the People, of course, because, communism's all about the people, Mr. Xi laid out his vision of a ruling party that served as the vanguard for everything from defending national security to providing moral guidance. Let me remind you of something. During the 20th century, communism is solely responsible, the political ideology of communism and Marxism is solely responsible for over 100 million deaths. And they're going to take the moral authority. They're the ones who are providing the moral guidance, the ones who are pushing this ideology along. He also called for the party not only to safeguard China's sovereignty, but also to revitalize Chinese culture, oppose erroneous ideology, and promote religion that is Chinese in orientation. Xi Jinping has arguably become China's new emperor. In his 3.5-hour speech, he laid out his agenda and vision to make the Communist Party the moral authority. The Communist Party. To the roar of applause, Mr. Xi Jinping also mapped out the Communist Party's long-term future for China's rise on the global stage, predicting that by 2050, China will stand proudly among the nations of the world and become a leading global power. China in 2016 engaged in a religious winter to demolish house churches and imprison Bible-believing Chinese citizens, so that now Xi Jinping and the Communist Party of China can claim such moral authority. One of the new rules laid out in 2016 reads that it will be an offense to organize citizens to attend religious training, conferences, and activities abroad, preaching, organizing religious activities, and establishing religious institutions or religious sites at schools, and providing religious services through the internet, all of which forces Christian churches in the region to disband or face harsher imprisonment. What China is doing is nothing new. This is the same campaign that Mao Zedong brought upon his people not too long ago. In fact, China is at an alarming rate emboldening their national socialist government. Where have we heard this before? This national socialist government. Joshua Eisman also stated that China is gearing up for a cultural revolution of sorts, one in which the elites of New York and Washington are involved. Now, why would they be doing that there? That's the question. A new cultural revolution is set to take shape in China with Xi Jinping leading the charge and over 89 million party members following suit. But just how powerful is Mr. Xi? China's leader is not only reinvigorating National Socialism, but he is also enshrining his ideological slogans into the party's constitution alongside only two others, Mao Zedong and Deng. In addition, China has no interest in Western systems of democracy, which could lead to a clash politically between the West and East, as we've previously discussed. In 2013, a document number 9, leaked to the West, signaled exactly how China viewed the West as total rivals. However, as the institutions of the West continually assault the Judeo-Christian values for which the U.S. was founded and the patriotism that followed suit, China is emboldening their roots. It's almost as if, as China and Russia both embolden their roots, the U.S. is forgetting theirs. We're forgetting our principles and our values and the things that made us great. Finally, it is strongly apparent that the marriage between Wall Street and Beijing is leading the world in one direction, towards a communistic rule. What signals the conclusion is that China is not alone in its endeavor. In fact, other nations such as those in the European Union, namely Germany, are following in China's footsteps. God bless and carry on.